that W over making an M. We in that Magnolia, put it down, Third Ward, you heard? I got him right here. Originally, you know him. That's Magnolia Slim.
Through the project, we've all saw a lot of things happen. It's a lot of history on that project.
I gotta admit, man, it's all on my people that's surrounding you right now in this store. By me being in a Magnolia.
After a certain while, kind of get used to it. It's like it's normal.
When researching infamous housing developments, you will rarely come across one with a bigger legacy than the Magnolia Projects. C.J. Peete Housing Development, also known as the Magnolia, was opened to the public in 1941. The Magnolia Projects were the first all-black housing project to be federally funded by the United States. The projects were among the largest in New Orleans. Over 2,100 people were housed in the Magnolia. At its height, the development had over 1,400 units. The Magnolia Projects have a very deep-rooted history that spans into the legacies of some of New Orleans' most influential figures. In this piece, I will go into the history of the housing development and its home to Third Ward. Then I will talk about some of the influential people that hailed from the Magnolia Projects. This will be followed by what made the project so infamous in not only New Orleans, but the United States of America.
Straight represent that uptown Third Ward, Magnolia all the way across that country, all over. I got the Juvenile from Cash Money Records. Look, man, in the house.
We over here at Keys. Y'all done heard me talk about Keys all the time, man. This is my hanging spot across the street from that Wild Magnolia. And I'm doing it with my boy Wild Wayne on Fat, man. It's all great. I'm glad y'all had me on.
But so we doing it uptown, trying to find out what's going on in life. You done made it from the bottom all the way to the top. Tell me what's happening in the Juvenile's world.
It's like 4 mics in the source. I mean, it's like Vibe, it's like MTV, it's like BET. You know what I'm saying, man. Y'all watch the box. Y'all see the boy in the Reeboks. What's up, weed?
The Magnolia Projects in 1941 was bordered by Louisiana Ave, Magnolia Street, Washington Ave, and LaSalle Street. The early days of the Magnolia were calm for the most part. They were filled with working-class New Orleans citizens. The Magnolia Projects were one of the first 2 housing projects planned for the Crescent City. Construction officially began in 1939, and it took 2 years to erect the buildings. The chief architect's name was Moise H. Goldstein. Goldstein went to public school in New Orleans and received his engineering degree at Tulane University. He was a well-respected architect who helped with projects at Dillard University, Audubon Zoo, and the Moisant Airport Terminal, which became the first Louis Armstrong International Airport. Construction of C.J. Peete was finished by R.I.P. Farnsworth Company. The total cost of construction was $2,478,980.
So the projects is like super complicated, you know. It's like it mean a lot to me in a bunch of different, you know, ways and senses. It's like, okay, so for one side of it, you know, one element of it is like, you know, the projects was where we grew up at, so it was a place you call home. You know what I'm saying? A lot of family, a lot of friends, you know, a lot of play cousins, and just a lot of good memories and good life, right? But then there's this other side of the projects of how the people put you in these conditions, like the government and like the powers that be. They put you on top of each other, right next to each other, all kind of families just, you know, bunched up together in like all the different, you know, like just racial and systemic issues that, you know, relate to that.
The projects were built with the colonial style in mind. The builders also wanted to incorporate New Orleans influences in the masonry. The front porches with decorative cast iron Corinthian columns and iron grillwork enhanced the look and feel of the complex. Other New Orleans influences included balconies, metalwork, and common courtyards that would later become homegrown amphitheaters used to showcase local talent. The interiors included fireplaces and railings on the stairways. There were original plans to include outdoor public showers, but that idea was later scrapped. Each super block contained buildings of different types to create a sense of neighborhood. The city's main medical care facility for African Americans, Flint Goodrich Hospital, sat right next to the projects on Louisiana Ave. The first 3 black mayors in New Orleans were born at Flint Goodrich. From 1952 to 1978, the manager was Cleveland Joseph Peete.
Well, the Magnolia, all those 3 different projects got their own identity, really. You know, the Magnolia more laid back than those other 2 projects, you know what I'm saying? Much, killing and all that kind of shit. It goes on, but not as much in the Magnolia. They really, trying to chill and relax. You feel me? Get money and relax. The Melpomene, on the other hand, they're a little faster. They still like the club and, you know what I'm saying, be seen, they flossy and, you know what I'm saying, shit like that. And the Calio, they just like to be on the low. You know what I'm saying? They really, I say they like a type of project that like to be on the low and, do their dirt on the cool, you feel me?
Before I get into some of the influential figures to come from the Magnolia, I want to talk about its home, the Third Ward. The Third Ward is one of the 17 wards in New Orleans, a division of the city of New Orleans. Located uptown, the Third Ward has produced some of the biggest names to come from the Big Easy. In order to understand how wards work, you first need to understand what they were made for. The wards were used as a political tool under previous city charters of the 19th century. New Orleans ended electing city council members by ward in 1912, but the ward pride lasted through the century. It's common in New Orleans to be identified by what ward you're from. Different wards have different personalities and ways of doing things. The Third Ward always stood out for various reasons, a lot of which had to do with its effects on the city's music scene. The Third Ward is home to legends like Louis Armstrong, Master P, Juvenile, and Big Freedia, just to name a few. While walking through the Magnolia gathering footage for this documentary, I stumbled across an empty lot with remembrance stones lined up on one side. The lot sat in the middle of what used to be the Magnolia projects. After approaching the stones, I learned something that blew my mind. The stones told the story of the Tommy LaFine School, a school that would have its own documentary due to its extensive and somewhat grim history. The school had 3 different lifespans, each having its own unique story. Tommy LaFine was a Creole businessman and philanthropist who funded progressive projects like the Underground Railroad. LaFine is believed to be America's first black millionaire and left most of his fortune to charity. The first Tommy LaFine School was erected in 1897 as a monument to his legacy. This made him the first black man and the second black person in New Orleans to have a school named for him. It was a large wooden building that costed around $15,000. The first principal of the school, Sylvanie F. Williams, was a well-respected educator. She supported women's suffrage, concentrating on women of African American descent. One of her students, A.P. Turo, went on to become a well-known civil rights lawyer. The first school was burned down by whites in 1900 after an altercation with a freedom fighter by the name of Robert Charles. This event impacted the New Orleans education system drastically. The New Orleans Parish School Board wound up canceling all African American public schools after the 5th grade. Students were left without education until almost 20 years later in 1917. Under Sylvanie's leadership, the school was rebuilt in the center of the Magnolia projects, where Locust Grove Cemeteries 1 and 2 were, before being filled up in 1879.
I don't know how I found out about it, but it just used to be like first it was like a little bit in the project. Then we start really, like you start talking to older people and you start finding out that shit was really true. That shit was like amazing like a motherfucker. Because the actual school sat in the project. Like,
right.
So it had you thinking, is the project built on this shit too?
The Locust Grove Cemetery, also known as Potter's Field, was a cemetery made for poor people in New Orleans and citizens who passed from yellow fever. Potter's Field existed in the late 1800s and was filled in 1879. A new school was built in the early 1950s after the mystery of the bones and caskets found on the construction site was solved. Developers and the Orleans Parish School Board had failed to conduct the necessary research to know or care about the history of the area. The bones were reburied in the city and the firm made sure not to disturb any more sites during the school's construction that wasn't necessary. The new school was progressive and designed with the New Orleans climate in mind. The design focused on creating an uplifting, positive environment for students to learn and interact with each other. The building was demolished in 2011. The site was eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, but did not become one due to the history of the site as a cemetery. The Louisiana Unmarked Burial Sites Preservation Act and the Louisiana Cemetery Act stated that the site couldn't be used for anything other than cemetery use. It gives you an eerie feeling when you associate the location of the school with its demise 3 times. It makes you wonder if supernatural forces played a role in ensuring that the space remains empty.
Yo, Peete game, it's your boy, Wild Weezy, put it down, fat and all of that style. Flip that W over, make it an M, we in that Magnolia, put it down, third one, you heard? I got him right here. Originally, you know him, there's Magnolia Slim. You know, then metamorphosized to Soldier Slim, uptown representative. What's cracking, baby?
Oh man, I can't make too much noise. I'm just holding it down in my hood, you know. But before I see anything, all my dogs that's locked up, I know y'all watching. Nothing but love out here, baby. I'm talking about this love out here. When you get out here, I got you. You hear me?
The Magnolia Projects has always been an incubator for music. This was thanks to a local hotel turned club called the Dewdrop Inn. It was opened in 1939, 2 years before the Magnolia housing projects opened. The club was the only desegregated venue in the city after the owner, Frank Painter, decided to let whites in. He was even arrested for breaking segregation laws. Famous acts who played at the club include Ray Charles, James Brown, Alan Toussaint, and Sam Cooke, just to name a few. Little Richard's producer first suggested that he record Tutti Frutti after hearing him performing at the Dewdrop Inn. The Dewdrop Inn inspired the residents of the Magnolia to explore music. It wasn't until the late 90s that things started to surge. Legends in music who called the Magnolia home include Juvenile, Soulja Slim, Magnolia Shorty, J Electronica, and Mr. Marcello. I'm going to talk about a few of my favorite artists from Magnolia, but only briefly. I plan on saving the detailed version for their own stories that we will produce in the future. James Adero Tapp Jr., aka Soulja Slim, is the first person I'm going to talk about because I personally feel that no one put on for the Magnolia harder than Slim. He helped carve out the identity of the Magnolia musically and in the streets. What made Soulja Slim so unique was his unapologetic charisma that everyone around him felt.
From the ATL to the NO, Fat following us. We keeping it real. Fat gonna be there. Anything dealing with that tank right there, Fat there. PHAT symbol. Yeah.
Being from the Magnolia Projects definitely impacted his view on life. Being exposed to the streets early does something to an individual's mind. The fact that he was able to navigate the streets while still pursuing his passion and starting a family is nothing short of commendable.
He was in jail a lot, so when he was out of jail, he was like kinda, you know that should be. But when I was around, you feel me? Like this nigga used to wash his own car, like, you know what I'm saying? He was regular to me, you feel me? He used to be pulling up in different whips and shit, and I knew he was around, but you know.
Soulja Slim was raised in the projects. After dropping out of school and gaining local popularity under the moniker Magnolia Slim, he partnered with KLC and signed to No Limit Records. He passed away after being hit 4 times by an assailant. He was sent home wearing his cutthroat committee chain and the camouflage outfit that he wore on Give It To Him Raw. One thing that you're going to realize when hearing these stories is that the music scene runs parallel to the street life. I'll go into more detail when I touch on crime, but there's a reason why most rappers in New Orleans talk about the streets in their music and meet untimely fates as a result. This next artist will be considered a polar opposite musically, but he hails from the same place. Tv Tvshow, commonly known as J Electronica, is a Rock Nation rapper from the Magnolia Projects. J Electronica isn't what you would expect when you say he's a rapper from the Magnolia. However, J Electronica is arguably one of the most talented lyricists to ever come out of the state of Louisiana. J Electronica left New Orleans to pursue his rap career because he felt that his style didn't fit in with the local rap scene. His approach to music wasn't the call and response style that New Orleans knew and loved. There was a time when we thought we'd never get a J Electronica album. He finally delivered after 10 years in 2020 with his debut album featuring Jay-Z, A Written Testimony. A fun fact about this album is that one of the songs titled Ghost of Soulja Slim features writing credits from James Adero Tapp Jr. A true salute from one Magnolia native to another.
Hey man, how you got the concept to do that video that we seeing on the box, that we seeing on PHAT and all of that we seeing on BET? Where that concept came from for, huh?
I gotta admit, man, it's all on my people that's surrounding you right now in this store. By me being in a Magnolia, I call my style off the post flow. So I took the everyday slang, the question, answer that everybody use every day. You know what I'm saying? Like, the ball went to the store, Say, brother, the Saints win that last game, You know, like that. That's juvenile. That's everyday slang. So look, that's the way I bring it to you.
Juvenile is one of my favorite rappers to ever come out of New Orleans. What most people don't realize about Juvenile is his musical range. Before Back That Ass Up dropped, Juvenile was a well-respected bounce artist from the Magnolia Projects.
So how you got started, man? I know a long time ago, for those that don't know, you was doing some work with DJ Jimmy, Precise and them with that bounce for the Juvenile. That was in 91?
92, you know. I mean, I'm an OG in the game. Y'all gotta respect the game. All this little bounce stuff you see all these people out there filing behind trying to do, they could do it, but they can't do it like I did it because I'm the originator. So some things you can't take from the originators, man. You gotta respect the game and catch a cut, man, when it comes to Juvenile.
Juvie felt that the Magnolia lived through his music. This was due to him rapping solely about his experiences growing up in the projects. His song Know Ya Clap put the Magnolia on a national stage.
I think the Know Ya Clap is the first, that's the remix. They got the Know Ya Clap original song that Wack made when he did it straight for New Orleans.
And it was just Wack by itself?
Yeah, just Wack by itself on that song. He do it for Uptown, Magnolia, it's a Know Ya Clap. He said all the city, all the walls name, it's the original. Some DJs play that bitch, how DJs play that bitch. But the one me and Juve on is the Know Ya Clap remix. That's the one that went nation. Yeah. That's just the remix.
And you said it took 4 years? This is y'all putting it on the road?
Like... No, we was on the road 10 years. It was just 4 years pushing Know Ya Clap. We did 10 on the road right quick.
He was an original member of the Cash Money Hot Boys and has one of the biggest songs in Cash Money's catalog. Juvenile has since signed back with Cash Money and continues to perform and record industry-level music. He's arguably one of the biggest success stories to come from CJP in my opinion. This is due to his impact on the game, longevity, and resourcefulness. Renetta Lowe, known by her stage name Magnolia Shorty, was an American rapper from New Orleans, Louisiana. Magnolia Shorty, along with Miss T, were the first women signed to Cash Money Records.
Well, I grew up in the Magnolia Project, and I've been rapping since I was like 12 years old. I was inspired by Magnolia Slim. Before he was Soulja Slim, he gave me my name, Magnolia Shorty. I was rapping with hyping up records with them when I was 12 years old, and then was signed to Cash Money later in my rapping career when I also was 12 years old.
After her wave increased through the New Orleans block party scene, she dropped Monkey on the a song that is widely considered a bounce classic. Her shows were so successful that she was approached by soon-to-be music moguls Ronald Slim Williams and Birdman of Cash Money Records. Cash Money signed Magnolia Shorty and officially released the song, and it skyrocketed. Monday, December 10th in 2010, Magnolia Shorty was booked for a show and was heading to her apartment before leaving town with Jerome Man Hampton. As she pulled into the gates, another car pulled in behind them and cut them off. They got out and opened fire in broad daylight. Neither of them made it out in time. The Wild Magnolia was the nickname given to CJ Peete housing projects after things started going south. In the 1980s, when rocks first hit the streets, no one could have predicted what it would do to the communities. The Magnolia turned violent and fell under a new set of rules. Rules set by the cliques that claimed the space for their own. Things were so bad in the Magnolia that the housing authority set up a police substation to get a grip on things. The Magnolia became one of the most infamous housing projects in American history. I want to take a second to point out that this was not natural human behavior. This was the byproduct of placing large groups of impoverished people on one block. Before diving into the story, I want to say that the system failed the Magnolia and the people of New Orleans. Things should have never gotten this bad.
So anything, first I remember they had this crew called the Four Horsemen. It was Jimmy Camooch, Black and Mo, Eric Maurice, and I think Willie.
The Four Horsemen.
Yes.
That's a cool name.
And it was like, this was before, like this was when I was coming out when I was young. And Black and Mo used to be like a hell of a jacker back then. A hell of a jacker. But we used to, like when I was coming up, like that's who we was actually seeing. I just remember the name because they used to stay right around the corner from me. So I remember them coming up with the name, but everybody knew, like, if anybody from that project, you know about Eric Maurice, Black and Mo, and the Camooch family, Ronald Camooch. Ronald was the #1 stunner before Stunner was.
Notable groups to come out of the Magnolia include the Four Horsemen, the Hot Boys, the Dooney Boys, and M. Trey. To be a hot boy in street terms meant to be an outlaw who followed the code of the streets. The Hot Boys rose to fame under Cash Money Records. What most people don't know is that the Hot Boys was originally a street clique in New Orleans that included Birdman's brother Terrence Williams.
Gangsta Mosquito, Sterling, Dooney. There was some gangsters out there, right? There was some gangsters.
See, when they were doing the Hot Boys, I was in the Holly Grove, so we didn't know about it, but we just heard the legend. And we had a couple of beef with some of the niggas and shit. Right. When they was in the street with them niggas, but the Hot Boys, they was some street niggas. Right. That Stone, Gangsta, Sterling niggas, man, was in the street. Yeah. That's how nigga got killed because he was in the street. And Cash Money did the rap Hot Boys. Probably just mimicking them niggas called niggas from Magnolia, so we gonna do the rap version of the street version niggas. But the Hot Boys was a rap version of some street niggas.
But Gangsta them was on some, the Hot Boys, like, they was in the streets on some gangsta shit, but they had money. And it was like, like they was hot with the bras and everything too. So it wasn't just hot because of them slinging 9. It was hot with the bras. They had all the hottest cars. Like, I remember Gangsta got that Infinity truck. We was like, what the is that? So there was, there was some young dudes who was getting money who just was a clique though. But I grew up right across the street I come up right across the street from Gangsta. It was some real hot boys. Some real hot boy shit going on.
The crew consisted of 4 members: Dooney, Sterling, Mosquito, and Gangsta. They covered a lot of ground in New Orleans with their underground operations. The lives of Sterling, Mosquito, and Dooney were all cut short as a result of their lifestyle. Dooney's legacy materialized as the Dooney Boys, one of the wildest groups to ever come out of the Magnolia. Terrence Williams was the only one with a different story. He was sentenced to the long ride after being convicted for most of the group's activities. The Hot Boys went on to become one of the most successful rap groups in history, while their inspiration fell victim to the streets that made them. The new generation of Magnolia hustlers almost saw a similar fate. Things took a different turn when one of the members, Nino Calvin, started generating a buzz in the national music scene.
I ain't gonna say numb to this, but it's like, after a certain while, you kind of get used to it. It's like it's normal, you feel me? So it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've been dying and going to jail since I was 4, 5, 6, 7 in the project. So it's like, that kind of set it up to be prepared for what's gonna happen, but I ain't know it was gonna hit that close. I ain't know I was gonna really be into the shit I'm in. I ain't know it was gonna be all that, you feel me? But I just deal with the shit, bro. Like, after a certain point, that shit just turn you cold, you know what I'm saying? You don't even, I mean, of course, you're gonna grieve over the shit, but after a certain while, you just numb to everything, you feel me?
My leg and my main artery, when in one side came out the other side, and I had to have surgery in both of my legs. And I'm trying to shake back on the walking process right now. I remember when I was running, it wasn't all that. So I like to see like one of my people, like one of my go from nothing to something.
You feel me? Like, I don't try to overthink it at all. I just keep pushing, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just gotta keep going. Like, it's just, bro, like, shit, it's New Orleans, shit real, shit happen. Any given day, something could happen. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I be trying to tell niggas and shit. Like, but like I said, it's men. So it's either just learn from another mistakes or learn from their own mistakes. But learning from your own mistakes could be too late.
You need to let them in here. This is real cowardly. And then you city council people who was elected by the people want to hide behind these sheets. This ain't no stage show. Where you hiding behind some curtains? Bring your common selves out here and let our people in here.
They're not destroying just developments. They're destroying communities that we built.
You know, it was a vote from the city council to either approve, you know, letting people back in the houses, demolishing the, you know, projects, you know, open them up and keeping them or whatever. And like we already heard before the vote that they was gonna vote against it.
In the spring of 2019, a group of college students sought to unravel the variables that led to the architectural decisions made by the city of New Orleans after the storm. What they found wasn't shocking to native New Orleans residents. They uncovered the motives and strategies implemented to successfully demolish and replace public housing with mixed income housing in order to redevelop entire neighborhoods.
So then that's where the price gouging and the ridiculous, you know, rents were at after Katrina, because they limited the housing stock. You feel me? And so that's where the gentrification come in at, with the white folks coming in who can afford $1,500 when we was paying $300 a month. You know what I'm saying? Wow. So like that just made everything just go through the roof and just sparked a lot of outcry, and that's where I had a problem at.
After the storm, demolition rates for public housing skyrocketed. This was easier to do under the guise of community recovery. CJ Peete housing projects were one of the first on the list to go. The projects only had 144 people occupying it in 2005. The Magnolia projects had been in the process of being cleared out since 1998. They were also partially demolished, returning them to their original size.
We were some of the last people to get put out. I mean, not actually put out, but we ain't want to leave. I don't know what made them do that shit like that. I just think it was a bad move. It pushed a lot of people out into areas that they wasn't used to and all that kind of shit. That's just my opinion.
Locked them up. They just locked them up, and you couldn't go back in there. And that's, you know, one of the other things, like all your memorabilia from your life in them joints, and you can't even go in there and get your kids' pictures.
So they just like, it was one day y'all came there and it was like,
yeah, they boarded up the fronts, and they put this metal type of bar on the windows and stuff like that where, you know, you couldn't get in.
The key players in the project were McCormick Baron Salazar, a for-profit real estate developer who organized the transition of CJ Peete to Harmony Oaks. The New Orleans Neighborhood Development Corporation, which received a $20 million Hope 4 grant to develop Harmony Oaks by adding 50 homeownership units. No former resident was eligible for a homeownership unit. Kai Design Build, which was the firm contractor to construct the new units. The New Orleans Housing Authority, which was under federal control from 2002 to 2014, and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. They funded the housing development of New Orleans through the Hope 4 grant. In 2006, the Department of Housing and Urban Development announced that they would be demolishing 5,000 apartments across the city's projects without notice to residents. The displaced residents filed a class action lawsuit in 2007 that claimed violations against the 1937 Housing Act and the 1968 Fair Housing Act. Later that year, after a heated 6-hour meeting, the New Orleans City Council voted unanimously to demolish the Big Four housing developments.
They intentionally blocked a lot of people out. So they had a few people in there and then they just locked the gates and said, well, you know, we at capacity. You know what I'm saying? And they had buku room in there, buku seats. I was one of the fortunate ones to get in, but it was like a hassle. Yeah. And so that's why it just, you know, it just hit me while I'm in there. This process is not what we supposed to be going through. When we saw the room, we up in there man, you know, let the people in. You know what I'm saying? Let the people in. They got a reason. They got a, you know, they're citizens, so they got a voice. Yeah, see what I'm saying? And they didn't. And so, you know, we was in there bucking and just representing for the people who wasn't in there. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, the police, they you know, I'll be quiet or something. I don't really remember what it was, but you know, one of them touched me and then we was, you know, going at it in there. You heard me? You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, then they voted like we knew they was gonna vote. Right, and unanimously. Yeah, unanimously. We already knew, and there you have it. You know, mixed income units.
The Magnolia projects were knocked down in 2008. 1 year later, the city broke ground for Harmony Oaks. The only remaining piece of the Magnolia sits on the corner of Ferret in Louisiana. One building was preserved for historical purposes, so if you're ever in New Orleans, don't forget to visit this piece of history.
How important is it for Black people to tell our own stories?
Very important, because who out for us but us? Who gonna care about what we do but us? We gotta stick together. We gotta work together. We gotta come together as a team and work together. Because if we work together, man, tell you, we're some of the smartest race. We the smartest race, one of the most intelligent race, and we just gotta utilize our talents and intelligence and smarts in a way that we can conquer the world. You know, we got it. We just gotta all work together. We gotta put our egos aside.
So first and foremost, I just want to thank everybody for watching this video. If you made it to the end of this video, thank everybody for their contributions, everybody that contributed footage, and I also want to publicly thank Chris from PHAT and all that. You know, he definitely did a lot for this video, man. It really couldn't have been done without him, honestly, because he provided us with all of the archive footage to tell a story in a way that's visually appealing. So I just wanted to give him the floor real quick for him to tell y'all about a few things that he's been working on. And I want y'all to subscribe to his channel as well, because a lot of the content that y'all see in this documentary, the full versions are gonna be on his channel on PHAT and all that. So make sure y'all subscribe to that. What you got, Chris?
Man, definitely subscribe to my channel. I appreciate that plug all the time. But we've been working together for a couple of months. We plan to do more projects together. And right now, what I've been working on, my main baby I'm putting out this documentary about Take 4 Records. I want everybody to check that out. That's gonna be huge. I mean, from the beginning of Take 4 to now.
Yeah, man. So make sure y'all go subscribe to that channel, Fat and all that. It's still growing right now. So if y'all subscribe right now, y'all about to catch all the exclusives, like stuff y'all never seen before. If y'all thought these little clips in this documentary was good, y'all gotta go check the channel out and see what he really got for y'all. You feel me? So I just want to thank y'all again. This is the first of a minute. We about to do a lot of things going forward. And just thank y'all. We out.